Back in Dota Dragon's Blood Season 1, the shopkeeper told Mirana that she is a princess that may be more than a princess. Later on, Mirana was losing herself to some hypnotizing force, but then she heard a voice from the stars saying,
Mirana, you have forgotten me.
The voice then said,
Mirana, remember.
At the end of Dota Dragon's Blood Season 2, Mirana touched the relic and heard the same voice and a similar statement.
Mirana, remember.
It turns out, Princess Mirana is the Eye of the World Worm, but what does that mean and why is she important? In the beginning, there was only the primordial mind, but the primordial mind was divided against itself. The two sides are called the Radiant and the Dire. They appear as the red and blue ore. Orath is a winter wyvern. She found some of the ore and it began to change her. When she would wake up, she no longer thought about fighting humans. Instead, she would think about conversing with them. In time, the voice of her Eldworm faded. Orath began collecting books and writing verse, and she never heard the dragon songs ever again.
But in my solitude, I had the most wonderful thought. I am.
Orath's thought is similar to that of the French philosopher René Descartes. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. So basically, Orath found the ore and it changed her. It separated her from her Eldworm and she began to live life independently. Something similar happened to another dragon, Kashura. The Invoker captured 5 of the 8 Eldworms this season, including the Void Eldworm named Bisrak. Unfortunately, there was another very powerful Void Dragon out there, Kashura. Since Kashura is a Void Dragon, he once thought of himself as the waste between the stars, the black curtain of night against which they burn. But just like Orath, Kashura found and hoarded ore, and the ore changed him. Kashura came to realize that the darkness meant nothing without the light. So he went in search of its source. All paths led him to one thing, the sun in the sky, which is also known as the World Worm. Kashura then realized that all dragons are interlinked with creation, that he, as a Void Dragon, was just a piece of the whole. That realization sent him into despair. But then he found a princess of the sun, whom he looked at as the World Worm made flesh. So he called her the Eye of the World Worm, and he loved her. Over the next 3,000 years, many people have held that power. Kashura always loved them and looked after them.
And in those millennia, I have loved you best, my precious sunbeam.
So long story short, Orath found ore, and it separated her from her Eldworm. She gained free will and began to read and write poetry. Kashura also found ore, but instead of writing poetry, Kashura flew over the cuckoo's nest. He became obsessed with the sun, and also people with the powers of the sun, people such as Mirana. Kashura told Mirana to give the word and take her throne, but instead, Mirana told Marcy to attack. Kashura restrained Marcy with his void powers, and then she went limp. When that happened, Mirana exploded in light. In figurative terms, Mirana became the Eye of the World Worm, or the Eye of the Sun, and the eye opened. The eye began to see.
You know what awaits you.
Val, my battle with Terrorblade, the beginning of the end.
When Mirana touched Slyrak, he glowed in radiance, then he changed back into Davian. So Davian is now free of Slyrak, and Slyrak has gone to Falfell to do battle with Terrorblade. So, what is Falfell? Terrorblade's goal is to possess the soul of all 8 Eldworms and then remake the world in his infernal image. Early in Season 1, Terrorblade killed the Earth Eldworm named Olderak and possessed his soul. The Invoker then captured the Water Eldworm named Lyrak and gave her to Terrorblade. So Terrorblade has 2 of the 8 Eldworm souls. Falfell is the name of the prison plane where Terrorblade is imprisoned, and that is where Slyrak has gone to do battle. But will Slyrak win? Or will Slyrak become the 3rd Eldworm soul in Terrorblade's collection? Now, let's take a look at the Invoker. The Invoker partnered with the Chaos Eldworm named Vadrak. Vadrak betrayed 4 of the Eldworms. Vadrak also gave himself over to the Invoker, claiming that it was the fulfillment of his purpose in the cycle of creation, namely chaos. So Terrorblade has 2 of the 8 Eldworm souls. Slyrak is going to Falfell to battle Terrorblade, and the Invoker has the other 5 Eldworm souls. So it begs the question, what is the Invoker's plan? 1,000 years ago, Salamene usurped the goddess of the moon, Mene. The Invoker has come to believe that Fimrin is Mene reborn, so the Invoker tried to get Fimrin to kill Salamene so as to take her divine spark. Unfortunately, Terrorblade had already entered Fimrin's mind and caused her to doubt the Invoker. On top of that, Salamene tricked Fimrin into thinking that Salamene is a good person and a good goddess. So instead of killing Salamene and taking her divine spark, Fimrin brought Salamene to her daughter Philomena's grave. Salamene then absorbed the powers within the hybrid flowers, so Salamene is back. She is once again the goddess of the moon, but she has a problem. Salamene relies on people worshipping her, but towards the end of Season 2, Luna rejected Salamene, saying that she would now follow Princess Marana, and the rest of the battalion agreed. So Salamene has lost a lot of followers, but she may have gained a new one, Fimrin.
Do you love me?
Let's break that down. 1,000 years ago, Salamene usurped the power from Mene. Salamene was obsessed with power, so obsessed that she wouldn't even heal her own daughter, since her daughter refused to worship her. The Invoker now looks at Fimrin like a daughter, and Salamene asked if she loves her, so basically, we are back at square one. Salamene the Usurper is back in power. Meanwhile, the Coriol Tavi are drunk off of their rage. They are traveling around killing innocent men, women, and children. Fimrin tried to get them to stop, but they did not listen to her. And now that Salamene is back in power, more blood is going to be spilt on both sides. In order for the Oracle's prophecy to be completed, Salamene must fall and Mene must rise. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Fimrin has to kill Salamene. There were a couple subtle clues that Salamene has a little bit of remorse for her late child. So for the most part, Salamene is terrible, but she is not beyond redemption, especially if she comes to look at Fimrin as her child. Of course, that's just tinfoil for the time being. Now, let's take a look at the ending. The Invoker tricked Terrorblade, so the Invoker now has 5 of the 8 Eldworms. But Terrorblade knows about Fimrin, and he knows that the Invoker now looks at Fimrin like a daughter. Terrorblade even warned the Invoker that he is going to exploit that. The Invoker countered by pointing out that Terrorblade's weakness is that he depends on others to affect the material world. Terrorblade has to corrupt people, whereas the Invoker simply trusts people to be who they are. What does that mean for Season 3? Well, let's take a look at the characters' choices in the finale. Orath risked her life to protect her friends. Bram then stayed behind to shield her. Kashura was too strong, so Davian told Slyrak to take his place in the flesh illusion, even though that meant that Davian would be gone for good. But he made that choice anyway. Bram then recruited Caden to the fight.
Big bastard. Tell me everything.
We share a common enemy today, little mouse.
Aesar slaughtered Lagacius, which allowed Marana to get inside the palace. Marana was captured, but Sagan risked his life to free her. Then, Marcy did the same. So Lena died, Orath died, and Marcy died. Sort of. Maybe she is both living and dead, just like Marana. Or maybe they will formulate a dragon's blood potion to resurrect those people. Or maybe not. They may just be dead, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. After all, Davian told Slyrak that flesh isn't ephemeral. Flesh is essential. Davian told Slyrak that life has meaning because it's short. Life has meaning because they are vulnerable, because they hurt.
When we're gone forever. It is why we fight. It's why I fight.
Please, Marty.